Welcome back everyone to the fourth installment of our tutorial series on making a brick breaker game. At the end of the last video we had it to where we could launch our ball and hit bricks. We have particle effects happening, a lot of that interaction going on here where we've got the ball, paddle, and bricks going. And in this video we're going to add in score, lives, and how to know when the level is over, which would be when all the bricks are broken. So let's jump right into it. Okay, the first thing we need to do is add some UI elements to the screen. We want to display score and lives at the top of our screen here. So let's go in and make a canvas. So if you haven't done this before, you go to Hierarchy, Create, and all of your user interface, which is shortened to UI, is right here in the UI menu. So we'll go ahead and create a canvas, and the canvas is basically our big piece of paper that we hang all of our UI elements on. So all of the UI elements have to be inside our canvas. Now the canvas draws as this big huge box that's off to the side of our scene view. So a lot of people get confused here and they think that they have to force everything into their scene view screen, but actually the canvas, they make it big enough to the side so we can work in it without interfering with our scene view objects. So this is my canvas, and this canvas is set to be a screen space overlay canvas right here in render mode. And that means that whatever is in this box will actually fit right in the actual camera view. So it's going to match the size and shape of our camera so that all the elements will match up. So for instance, if I make a text box here, so to make a text box to display score and lives, I'm going to right click on my canvas and I'm going to go to UI. I like to right click on the canvas and do it this way because that way I make sure it actually adds it to my canvas as a child object. You could also go to Hierarchy, Create, UI, or you could just right click anywhere in the hierarchy and go to UI. But if you right click your canvas, it'll make sure it adds it as a child of the canvas, and they all need to be children of the canvas so that they can be seen on the canvas. So I like to do it this way. So canvas, UI, text. That puts a text box right here in the middle of my big canvas, and you can see faintly over here in the middle of the screen it's there as well. To work in the canvas, the best tool to use is right here, the rectangle tool. So if that's not selected, you just click here in your rectangle tool, and then you can actually grab anywhere inside of the rectangle and you can move it around to where you want it. So I want one of these to be over on the upper left side, and let's make this a little bit bigger. You can just grab corners and pull. Let's go over here now into the inspector for this. Here's the text that's being displayed in the box. So let's make this for our score. So I'm just going to put some placeholder text in here so I can see how it looks on the screen and get it formatted. So, and let's say that we're going to let them get up to maybe, I don't know, maybe a 6-digit score. Give lots of digits here so we make sure it fits in the box. Okay, now this text is really hard to read, so let's go here and change its color. So let's pick maybe kind of a cyan, kind of a brighter blue color. We can really brighten that up. And then let's make it bigger. So right here in font size, we can change that. Now any of these number ones, if you go to the side to get the double-headed arrow, I can just click and drag left or right to change the size. So this is kind of a quick way just to kind of rough fit your size here. So let's go somewhere around a 35, I think. We want it nice and big where it can be seen. So we'll put our font size to a 35 here. You can also do alignment in the boxes if you like. I'm going to leave this left aligned, but maybe I'll center it vertically in the box just so it's nice and in the middle. And that looks like it's good for my score text, and I made sure I've got room for the word score and then 6 digits. So let's give this a name in our canvas here. So it's good to name these because otherwise we might have several things that are called text. So let's just name this score text. I always like to name things with what they are. So score and then the word text tells me this is a text box, and it'll be easier for me to find these later when I need to. The next thing we want to do then is make a lives text box. So once I've got one set up the way I like it, like the score text here, I can just duplicate this one and move it over, because that way it'll match the same formatting, font size, color. I don't have to set any of that again. So I can just right click score text, go to duplicate, it gives me an exact duplicate. It puts it right on top of the other. So if I click here and drag now, you'll see the new one comes off. I'm going to let this kind of stay aligned like that for now, and then I can just change its name over here so I don't have two called score text. We'll call this lives text. And then let's go over here into the placeholder text and change what it says here. We'll say lives and a colon, and I don't know, let's just do 3. That seems pretty standard. Now what we can do here is, if we want this to tuck itself over next to the screen, kind of like this one is, let's just change the alignment to right align, and that will move it over to the right side of the box. And then we can just check to see, since these boxes are the same width, let's just see if they've got the same distance from the center. So the score box is at a negative 359.3x. So let's just round that off to a 360 maybe. A negative 360, just to make it easy. If we go here to the lives box, this should be at a positive 360. So I was actually pretty close there with a 361. And what that'll do then is it'll make it so that we've got the same amount of space on both ends. Just makes it nice and symmetrical. People see those little details. So let's see. The other thing we want to talk about is anchor points. When I click on these boxes, you notice that there's this X in the middle of the canvas here. That's our anchor point for the text, which means that if the screen gets resized, it gets played in a different resolution, all this text here will try to stay this far from the center of the screen. Now this could be a problem because on a computer screen we're fine, but if people make their window much bigger, there's a chance that these will keep creeping down in the screen, or if we make it smaller, it might push them off the top. So you want to set anchor points for these that make sense. So on the score text here, that's closest to this top left corner of the screen. So I'm going to anchor it there so that if it gets resized, it just always stays tucked over here in the top left corner. To do that, I go in the inspector and click in the rectangle transform. This little anchor point looks like a little target kind of thing. And here's a bunch of presets. I'm going to pick the one here that is left top. When I do that, the X here moved to the left top of the screen. That's what I want. Now let's do the same here for lives, but this time in lives, I want it to anchor to the right top of the screen. So same thing, click here, right top. The X moves over. So now we see that the text boxes are created. I've named them in the hierarchy, and I've put some placeholder text and anchored them to the part of the screen that makes the most sense for them to stay next to. All right, now we've got these set up. Now it's just a matter of, from our script, coming out and changing the values in the box, in these text boxes as things happen. So we're going to have to go in somewhere and add in score and lives. We could pick one of our objects that's already here in the scene and add to it, like we could go to the ball or to the paddle. But a lot of times when we're doing things like score and lives and other kind of things that the game has to keep track of, we actually make a special script just to handle that. So that's what I'm going to do in this case as well. So in my hierarchy, I'm going to create an empty game object, and I'm going to call it GameManager. So this is just an empty game object. Its whole purpose in life is just to hold a script and whatever other kind of information we want it to keep track of. So an empty game object just has a position. It does not have any visual kind of representation in the game. And then in my game manager here, I'm going to add a script. So let's go down here and create a new C# script. This is going to be our game manager script. So I'm just going to call it game manager. And Unity in the 2017 version here actually has added this interesting kind of icon. If you call it script game manager, it gives you this little gear, and that helps it stand out from your other scripts. And it's a very common naming convention and process to have a game manager script to handle things like score and lives and other events in your game. So I'm going to go ahead and drag my game manager script here to my game manager game object out in the scene so that it is attached, and now it's ready to run. Let's open up the game manager script in MonoDevelop. Here's our game manager script, and the first thing we want to do is give it a couple of variables here to hold our lives and our score. So up here at the top of our class, let's make a public int for lives. And let's also make a public int for score. So that's where we're going to keep track of how many lives we have and what our score is. And then we're ready to go on the integer side here. We also need to be able to connect from our game manager to our text boxes on the screen. So our game manager needs to access the scores and lives text so it can actually change the values that are there. So we need to add some special variables that can hold a reference to a text, a UI text element. So in my script, I'm going to make a public text. Now you notice as I'm typing that text does not show up in my completion list, and that's because Unity does not include the UI scripting methods in the basic script here. So we actually need to go up here to the top and add another using. So we're going to say using, if I can type it right, using Unity Engine .ui. That tells MonoDevelop here to go out and attach all the UI methods and functions to the script so we can access them. So now that I've done that, if I type in public text, it's happy. So let's just go ahead and back that out. As I start typing text in, it pops right up in my completion list. All right, so now that's included. And let's just call this lives text. And then let's make another one, another public text, and call this score text. So now I've got some variables that can hold a reference to text boxes on the screen. So I'm going to save this script. I'm going to go out into Unity, and then I'm going to go to my game manager that has the script, and you see now that we've got lives and score, and we've got lives text and score text. I can go ahead and set my lives to 3 here, because maybe that's my starting lives. And then I need to tell the script here which text boxes on the screen should match these variables. Which one are we holding a link to? So lives text would be my lives text from right here. So I'm going to grab it from my canvas and drag and drop it right here in the box. I'm also going to grab my score text from the canvas and drop that here. So now I've made the connection between my script and the physical boxes on the screen here that I can send text to. Back in our script then, in our start function, let's just go ahead and initialize those text boxes. So let's just say lives text dot text equals, and then we just feed it a string. So I needed to say the text box's variable name, lives text, and I had to go to dot text because that says go to the text that's being displayed in the box. And then I can make that equal to a string, so I put a string in quotes. And what I want it to say is lives with a colon and a space, and then on the end of that I want it to add the actual number of lives we have, which is contained in my integer variable lives up here. So I'm going to type lives like that. So it'll construct a sentence here, or jam these two things together as one string. So it'll put this, and then it'll convert this lives into a string and jam it on the end. So whatever value it is, which I just set it to 3. Let's also go ahead and initialize our score. So let's do score text dot text. So I'm going into the text value, what's being displayed in that text box, and let's put score, and make sure we put a space. Whoops, I forgot to put my quotes, and close quotes here, and same thing, we'll put a plus sign and we'll add our current score to the end of that, which should be 0. So let's just save this. Let's go back out to Unity. Just so we can see this working, let's go into our score text and just wipe out this placeholder text, and we'll go to lives as well and wipe out that placeholder text there that I put in. And when I hit play now, they should fill back in with what I just put in the script. So let's just test it out and see if we get that back. And you see it did. The Game Manager script ran, and it sent those initial values right out here to our text boxes on the screen. All right, good. Now we have to decide at what point are we, let's say, taking a life away. Let's do lives first. So in our game, whenever we hit the bottom of the screen, so we have this bottom screen edge, let's zoom in on that in our scene view, down here, that's got this trigger box collider on it. So whenever the ball hits this right now, it is repositioning itself to the paddle and following the paddle around, waiting to launch. So what we need to do is every time we hit the bottom screen edge, that's when we're going to lose a life. We've lost the ball out of play. So we're going to lose a life here, and then we're going to have to check to see if we have any lives left over. If we do, then we can go ahead and reposition the ball back and let the player launch it again. But if we're out of lives, then that's going to trigger the end of the game. So I don't know that we'll handle triggering the end of the game in this video, but let's definitely get it taking lives away when it gets off the bottom of the screen. So back in our script, we need to have a way of knowing when we go off the bottom of the screen. So if we look at our ball script, it's doing a onTriggerEnter2D function here that is checking for the bottom of the screen. We have that tagged as bottom, that collider on the bottom of the screen. And right now we're setting our velocity to 0 and we're saying in play is false, which in our update function, if in play is false, then we're telling it to follow the paddle around. So not only do we want to do this, but now we want to actually go out and tell the game manager that we've lost a life. Okay, so we need some way for this script, our ball script, to talk to our game manager script and tell it that something has happened. So in this kind of a simple game, the best way to do that is just to have the ball have a reference to the game manager script. So I can do that by going up here and making a variable for it. So in my ball script, I'm going to add a new variable. I'm just going to call this a public, and I want it to hold a game manager script. So I'm going to feed it the name of my game manager. So if I start typing in game manager, it shows up. And this shows that this is a public class and it's a mono behavior. So that's the script. Alright, so I'm going to make a variable that can hold a reference to that script, and let's just call it GM for short here. So that's for my game manager. So if I save this and go out into Unity now, and I click on my ball, you see now this variable shows up here. And right now it says none, but it's looking for a game manager. So I just have to give it the game manager object here. So I'm going to grab my game manager from the hierarchy. I'm going to drop it in here, and it will then connect to the game manager script that is there. So see, now it says we're on the game manager and we got the game manager script. So now I've established a reference or a link to that. Now I'm ready to be able to access things in the game manager script. So let's make a function in our game manager script that's going to handle what happens when we lose lives. And let's also write this in such a way that it can handle adding lives, because we will do some power-ups in this game, and one of those might be get an extra life. So let's go to the game manager and let's make a function in here that will handle what happens when lives are added or taken away. So I'm going to make this a public function, so public void, and let's call this update lives. And we're making this public because this script is going to be called from other scripts. So if it's public, we can access it from outside of the script. If it's not public, then only the game manager script itself could call it. So public void update lives. Let's also make a parameter here. So let's finish off our body here, and then up here in our parameter, let's make a parameter that is how many lives did we just lose or gain. Normally it's just going to be 1, but why not make it so that it's a little more flexible. So we're going to make an int variable here, an int parameter, and let's call this change in lives. So this is going to be the change in our lives. This could be positive, this could be negative. And then in the body of our function here, what we're going to do is we're going to add that change in lives to our current lives. So we'll say lives plus equals change in lives. So if we send a positive number here, then we'll gain a life. Lives will become equal to whatever lives currently is plus that positive lives. If we lose a life, we'll send a negative number here, and then it'll add that negative in. So if you add a negative number, you actually subtract. So this will handle the way we've written this, being able to send positive or negative lives. So for now, we'll do that. And then what we want to do is we want to update the text on our screen. So that lives text needs to be updated every time lives changes. So we're going to do basically what we did up above here. We'll say lives text dot text equals, we want to make sure it keeps the word lives here in the colon and a space, and then we're going to go ahead and just jam on the value of lives on the end. So we change our lives here to update either a positive or negative gain or loss in lives, and then we update the text box on the screen. We'll handle what happens if we run out of lives in here as well later on. So let's just put a comment here for now that we need to check for no lives left and trigger the end of the game. So we'll come back to here later and do that probably in a different video. But for now, we should see lives being able to be updated when we call this function. So we'll save this, and now we just need the ball script to call update lives and send in that we lost a life. So let's go to our ball script. So again, in our onTriggerEnter2D function where we hit the bottom, not only are we going to do all these things here, but we're also going to go to the GameManager. So GM is my variable that I have a link to the GameManager, and we'll say dot, and then we'll say the name of our function that we just made, which was called update lives. So let's start typing that in. It should pop up right there, update lives. It tells me it's a public void function and that it needs an integer change in lives. So let's say update lives, and let's send it a -1 because we actually just lost a life, so we just want to take one life away. So that should now call the script in the GameManager, run that function with a -1, and we should see our lives changing. So let's save all our scripts. Let's go back out into Unity here, look for errors. Looks like we're good. Let's just test this out now and see if we actually can lose lives. So lives is at 3. I'm just going to launch the ball and then let it go off the bottom of the screen. And there we go. The ball still comes back like it was before, but my lives are now updated to 2. So every time we lose a life, it's going to drop down. And of course, we're not ever stopping it, so right now it will go to negative numbers. So that is part of what we will have to fix when we go to ending the end of the game at a different time. All right, so now that we've done lives, let's go ahead and do score. And score is going to be similar to lives in that we want there to be a function in our GameManager script that will add points to our score. So let's go back to MonoDevelop in our GameManager. Let's go ahead and set that function up. So similar to what we did for update lives, we need this to be a public function. So let's call this public void, and we'll call this update score. And just like we did before, we want to bring in an integer, which is the number of points that we're going to add. And again, we could send negative points here if we had maybe some bricks that we hit that would cost us points. That could be a feature we add later on. So we'll just put points in here, and this could be negative or positive. And then we'll finish off the body of our function here. So we have another public function that's ready to go. And what it's going to do is it's going to take the number of points that we send in through the parameter here and add it to our score. So score plus equals points. And then, just like we did for lives, we want to update that that text box that's holding our score on the screen. So we can just actually copy our little line right here and just paste it in right there. So now it will change every time we get points. We'll call this, and then we will update our score to the new score. So let's save that. Let's go back out to our ball script here, because in our ball script we know we've hit a brick in our onCollisionEnter2D function. So here, if we hit a brick, we're doing the explosion, we're destroying the brick, but let's also send in some points. Now, just thinking through our maybe plans for the game in the future, it might be nice to have some bricks worth more points than others. So let's give the bricks a script that's going to hold a few things about the bricks. Like for now, we'll just do how many points the bricks are worth. So I'm going to, before we add this code in for adding points, let's go and modify our bricks here a bit. So out in Unity, let's make another script. So I'm going to go to my script folder here, and I'm going to create another C# script, and let's call this the brick script. And we want this brick script to be on every brick that's in our level. So let's actually attach it to the prefab that we have made for our bricks. So we can do that a couple of ways. We could actually just go to our prefab here and we could add it in here, or we could drag it out to one of our bricks and apply it back, but let's do it here. So I'm going to go to my prefab brick, I'm going to go to add component, and I'm going to just start typing in the name of the script that I made. So brick script. You'll see it'll find it in my project here. So I'm just going to attach the brick script. So the brick script is now attached to the prefab, which means if I go here to my bricks in the scene, you'll see that they all, let's click a few, now have a brick script. That's because these are instances of my prefab. So if I change the prefab, all these copies out in the scene automatically change. So that makes it super quick and easy to add something new to a whole bunch of objects in the scene. So now we've got the brick script attached to the bricks. Let's open that script up in MonoDevelop. Here's our brick script, and let's just give this brick script, so let's actually just take out these functions here for now. We don't need them. Right now this is just going to hold some information about our bricks. So let's make a public int called points. So this is going to be how many points this brick is worth. So that's all we're going to put in the script for now. Let's save it. Let's go back out to Unity. Let's click in on our brick prefab again so we can see its script, and let's go ahead and just give it some points. So let's say these bricks are just worth 1 point for now. So we'll just put a 1 there in points. And again, since I changed the prefab out here in the scene, all these bricks will update. So in their brick script, they're all going to be worth 1 point. Okay, now we're ready to go back into MonoDevelop here to our ball script. And when we hit the brick, we're getting a reference to it through this other. Right? We're already checking to see if that other's got the tag of brick. We're doing the explosion, destroying the explosion. Before we actually destroy the brick itself, though, let's access its script and find out how many points it's worth. And then what we're going to do is we're going to send that number of points to our GameManager to add those points. And we can kind of combine this. If we go to GM, our GameManager, and we say update score, it needs an integer variable here inside its parentheses, right? So what we can do here is we can actually get that from the brick. So what we'd have to do is we'd have to say other dot, and then let's go to the game object of this other thing, and then let's do a get component. So we can get component right here, and then in the angle brackets here we have to tell it what component we want. Well, we want the brick script. These bricks all have a brick script, so I'm going to go there and get its brick script, and that's a method, so we got to put those open close parentheses at the end. And then from the brick script we can go dot, so we'll say get from the brick script the number of points it's worth. So we're accessing that public variable points in the brick script on this particular brick. So I know this might be confusing if you haven't seen this before, but basically we're saying go to the other thing, the thing we just hit. Go to its game object and then get from it its script. And then go into that script and get the value of points from it, which is set to 1 right now. So all of this is basically just going to turn into a 1 because that's how many points we have. We will then send that 1 to our update score function in our GameManager, and our GameManager will then update our score. So let's save this and run this and see if we can get some points showing up here in our score box. Alright, so it's score 0, but when I hit this, see how I got 1? And now I'm going to get, I hit 2 bricks there at the same time, so I got 3. So it's counting up. Every time I hit a brick, I'm getting 1 point from it. Alright, I think perhaps that's enough to do for this video. So as always, thanks for watching. I hope you're finding these to be useful. In the next video, we'll be taking a look at how to end the level when we have broken all the bricks or when we run out of lives, and then we'll see where we go from there. But if you have any comments or if you have any questions or suggestions, please leave me a little note in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching and have a great day.